Good morning. My name is Aisha Chugtai, and I'm the chair of the Budget Committee. I'm going to call to order our adjourned committee meeting for Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. Before we begin the meeting, I want to offer a friendly reminder to all members, staff, and the public that these meetings are broadcast live to enable greater public participation. These broadcasts include real-time captioning as a further method to increase the accessibility of our proceedings to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of the rate of their speech so that our captioners can fully capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask all speakers to moderate the speed and clarity of their comments. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify the presence of a quorum.
Councilmember Payne.
Present.
Wansley.
Present.
Ringo.
Present.
Vita.
Present.
Ellison.
Here.
Osman.
Present.
Cashman.
Present.
Jenkins is absent. Chavez.
Present.
Chowdhury.
Present.
Palmisano.
Present.
Vice Chair Koski.
Present.
Chair Chugtai.
Present.
There are 12 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. I'll also remind my colleagues that we're using speaker management today, so please make sure you sign in. Colleagues, welcome to the third day of budget markup. The one and only piece of business before us today is to continue the process of considering revisions to Mayor Fry's 2025 recommended budget. Yesterday, we made our way through amendment number 30, and today we will be starting at amendment number 31. Throughout the day yesterday, I heard concerns from a number of colleagues about the pace of progress we are making with our amendment packet. So as such, I've had an opportunity to confer with our clerk and our council president, along with the chair and vice chair of our committee of the whole. And there are three things I want to bring to your attention as we work our way through today's session. The first of those is, per our rules, there are limits to debate, meaning that in this committee, we will be adhering to the limit of 2 speeches per member. The first speech being 7 minutes, and the second one being 5 minutes, and that will be the limit on debate. Are there any questions related to what I've outlined with this first piece? All right, I'm not seeing any. Now, the second thing is there are, in our council rules, there are tools outlined that have been used once so far in our markup sessions that allow us to end debate and take action on a proper motion before the body. I'm going to recognize our city clerk, Casey Carl, to speak to a motion to call the question and how a member goes about doing that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A motion to move the previous question, also known as call the question, is a motion, requires a second. So someone would be in queue, the motion would be seconded. If that motion carries, then the effect of that motion is to shut debate down or end debate and move to consider the pending question. So it is a motion which would otherwise cut off debate, and as a result of that, it passes with a 2/3 majority vote. So 2/3 of the members present and participating are required to adopt that motion. If that motion is adopted, as the chair just indicated, then the body would proceed to take up the immediately pending question at that time.
Is a motion to call the question a priority motion, and is it debatable?
It is not a priority motion. It is not debatable. So the effect of it is to cut off debate. So we don't debate a motion to stop debate.
Got it. Are there any questions on this piece? I'm not seeing any. And now, and this is the most important for all of you to know. This is where the third piece I want to outline to help us make progress today through our packet, our markup packet, is this is where I had a chance to confer with Council President and our committee of the whole chair and vice chair. And this session this morning is scheduled to end at 12:30 p.m. We will end no later than 12:30 p.m. This will allow members to get a lunch break for 1 hour before we begin our regularly scheduled committee of the whole meeting. There is a discussion item and a consent agenda for our committee of the whole meeting. So we will take that up, and in order for us to get some more time this afternoon to continue making our way through the markup packet, we will adjourn this morning's budget committee meeting to 2:30 p.m. this afternoon, where we will then begin taking up the remainder of the packet, whatever is left, if needed. And at that time, we will begin our afternoon session at 2:30, and we will continue until 5 p.m. 5 p.m. is when dinner will arrive for all members. And so we will adjourn at that time, and whatever we have remaining will be forwarded to the adjourned council meeting, scheduled to begin at 6:05 p.m. this afternoon. Once we close the public hearing, our final public hearing on the budget, our truth and taxation public hearing, we will take up anything that is remaining at that time. So are there any questions about the three things I've outlined today? I'm not seeing any, so with that, as a reminder, I will recognize the lead author of each amendment to introduce their motion, and then we will open the floor for discussion on the amendment before taking a final vote. I see the city clerk in queue for a priority motion.
Sorry, I didn't know that the staff had put me in. I was going to remind us about reconsidering the vote on number 30 from yesterday.
Thank you so much for that reminder. So I had a chance to talk with Councilmember Rainville about this last night. Councilmember Rainville would like to change his vote on amendment number 30. As a reminder, that was the Avivo Village Stabilization and Shelter Operations Grant, which was approved 11-2 yesterday. Councilmember Rainville was one of the two members that voted no on this amendment, and he would like to change his vote to a yes. So seeing, unless there are any objections from members of the body, I would ask the clerk to make that change. I'm not seeing any, so it sounds like, Mr. Clerk, please go ahead and update the roll call on that item. All right, with that, I will recognize the lead author of each amendment to introduce their motion. We will open the floor for discussion on the amendment before we take a vote. Staff from the Budget Office, along with members of the Mayor's Cabinet, are on hand to address questions that may arise during our discussion, as well as departments whose budgets are being considered for changes. We will be using the timer function today. Each member will receive 7 minutes for their first speech and 5 minutes for their second speech. If the recognized member chooses to use their time to ask an author to yield or ask an author to address a question or ask staff to address a question, the time used by the author or staff counts towards the recognized member's speech. With that, we are returning to our amendment packet with amendment number 31, which is Senior Housing Code Abatement. It is offered by Council Members Wansley, Koski, and Chowdhury. So I will recognize Council Member Wansley to please introduce and move approval of your amendment. Councilmember Wansley, I apologize. We're having some tech issues. So we are going to just pause for 1 second and get that figured out.
You started. And it sounds like I can be heard pretty well in the room because you were pretty quiet on my end.
Oh, does this help? Is that a lot better? Does that help? Is that fine? Okay, is that better? Do you want me to? Okay. All right. It's pretty crappy. Yeah, so, but yeah. 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 So.
Follow the microphone. They can hear you now.
Oh, it's probably the mic. Okay. So restart.
Okay, we hear you. Apparently someone said they hear you now.
Okay.
But I don't know if the thing didn't work.
Okay. Well, I will.
All right. Colleagues, we have addressed our audio issue, and so I understand that when Councilmember Wansley was initially speaking, that was not picked up on the live stream. So, Councilmember Wansley, I will recognize you to introduce amendment number 31 and move approval of your amendment.
Thank you, Council Vice President Chektai. So this budget proposal would allow senior residents living in owner-occupied housing to apply for small grants and or loans for housing code abatements, which are typically used to make minor renovations to correct property code violations to support residents who are aging in place. This will also reestablish a program that was outlined in Minneapolis for a lifetime age-friendly action plan, which was implemented here at the city from 2014 through 2016. The city's Minneapolis Advisory Committee on Aging, which is a appointed board established by the city council, also recommended that we reinstitute this program in the 2025 budget. Again, I do want to note that though this is one-time funding for 2025, I am absolutely committed to working with my colleagues and the administration to figure out a long-term, sustainable funding source for this program. Because it's become very clear that our seniors want to see us do a lot more work in making investments in improving their quality of lives here in the city. So with that, I will close by thanking the committee for, specifically the Minneapolis Advisory Committee on Aging for making the clear, concrete ask of us to make this investment. And I look forward to more engagement with that committee on how we can ensure that we are, once again, delivering for our seniors who do make up 20% of our city's population. So with that, I will ask for a second and move this amendment for approval.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Wansley. This item has been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion from members of the committee? I will first recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. I can't support a cut of $810,000 to our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We will lose additional affordable housing unit creation and preservation. So I was curious, either COO Anderson Kelleher or maybe I see Director Hansen in the back of the room. I have a couple of questions for them. This one might be more pertinent to Director Hansen himself. Sorry, I'll let him get up here. Good morning, Director.
Good morning.
Director Hansen, do we have the staff capacity to recreate this program?
Welcome, Director Hansen. If you'll first begin by introducing yourself.
Of course. Good morning, Council Vice President, members of the committee. I'm Eric Hansen. I'm the CPED Director. Through the Chair, Councilmember Palmisano. It all depends on what reestablish means, and we'd have to work with the author. We have an existing program that we have a staff member that is grant funded. That grant funding expires at the end of this year. We'd have to reassign staff within the housing division to administer this through our home improvement program.
So then is this a duplication of that existing city program that we administer?
Through the Chair, Councilmember Palmisano, I'd say this is similar to what the set-asides that we talked about yesterday and some other programs. This would then be available to those who meet the definition of a senior and owner-occupant.
Mm-hmm. And would there be any look at prioritization based on need, economic situation?
Council Vice President, Councilmember Palmisano, yes, our program guidelines will have needs, need-based first, and then let me just make sure I'm reading it correctly. It is I have too many things open here. We look at emergency repairs, health and safety repairs, and then general repairs and remodeling.
And then yesterday, you said it was your opinion that this would be an eligible use of money for a different budget amendment. So you believe that this is an eligible use of funds. Do we have confirmation from the state of Minnesota on that?
Councilmember Chugtai, Councilmember Palmisano, it's our belief from the city attorneys that we are interpreting it. We have not vetted that with the state of Minnesota. This is a local sales tax, so we administer it like, it's funding to the city. We administer it through the legislative authority, and the legal opinion we've gotten is this would add to an improve or under the improvements clause in that legislation.
Thank you. Madam Chair, my concern is this isn't fully vetted. We're using one-time money to create a program that will become more known, and hopefully it will help a lot of seniors, and that's great, but we do not have another foreseeable $810,000 in an ongoing way to create this program. Maybe we should wait until we do. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions or discussion from the committee. Colleagues, we have the Senior Housing Code Abatement Amendment offered by Councilmember Wansley before us. I will ask the clerk to call the roll on the revised amendment number 31.
Councilmember Payne.
Aye.
Wansley.
Aye.
Rainville.
No.
Vita.
Aye.
Ellison.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Cashman.
Aye.
Jenkins.
Abstain.
Chavez.
Aye.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Palmisano.
No.
Vice Chair Koski.
Aye.
Chair Chugtai.
Aye.
There are 10 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 abstention.
That motion carries. Before we continue, I will note that we have been joined in this meeting by Councilmember Jenkins. Next, we will move to amendment number 32, which is in your binder. That's the most up-to-date version of this amendment. And this amendment is the Stable Homes, Stable Schools Expansion Pilot Program offered by Councilmembers Chavez, Payne, and Chowdhury. I will recognize Councilmember Chowdhury to introduce your amendment and move approval.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. We are bringing forward a budget amendment that will be allocating $830,000, $500 one time to from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund proposal for a pilot to expand the Stable Home, Stable School program for early childhood and middle school homelessness prevention. As we all received the presentation in our Intergovernmental Relations Committee for Minneapolis Public Schools has seen a 30% increase in homelessness among their students. As we work to address homelessness in our community, it's super important that we also tackle the issue at a young age and support our youngest residents who are in school and also support their families. This proposal will fund the expansion of the effective and successful Stable Homes, Stable Schools program, and their administrators have identified 2 core needs that will be fulfilled by this expansion: an initiative with an early childhood prevention pilot program and a middle school pilot program. The early childhood prevention program, I'll just detail out a little bit, will be reaching families with infant to preschool age children who are unstably housed and serves to prevent any initial homelessness episodes by preventing homelessness of 0 to 5-year-olds. The middle school program will be expanding the services around housing stability from Stable Homes and Stable Schools to other Minneapolis public schools to further extend the benefits of the child, family, and school stabilization. And services include financial assistance and light case management. Stable Homes and Stable Schools and MPHA have indicated that this is a natural step for expansion for them. It's estimated that funding both proposed pilot expansions, again, will cost about that $830,000. This accounts for the $755,000 program expenses and $75,000 in administrative fees. By funding both proposed pilot expansions, MPHA estimates that an additional 180 to 225 families representing 440 to 565 children could be served by the Stable Homes, Stable Schools program. MPHA and Stable Homes and Stable Schools administrating partners propose these expansions as pilots to allow us to sunset efforts if ongoing support is not identified. Again, this is a tangible way for us to lean in and ensure that we are supporting our kids, families, schools, and educators in a moment where it is very timely to be addressing the affordable housing crisis. I ask for your support today, and I will move this for approval and ask for a proper second.
Councilmember Chowdhury has moved approval of this item. Is there a second?
Second.
This item has been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion from members of the committee? I will first recognize Councilmember Ellison.
I just wanted to get a sense of where, with these multiple cuts, I support the principle of the last amendment and this amendment, but using the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in this way is concerning to me. And, as someone who knows that we are going to start seeing huge cliffs with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in the coming years, and I think we're seeing one just this year. With these cuts, where are we landing in the? Do we know what the total amount for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is? If we're cutting 800 here, 800 there, where's that landing us?
I'm happy to address that question, Council Member. So there are 3 amendments that have taken resources from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Those are the Koski affordable, or that have taken from the local, from LAHA. The Koski amendment on affordable home ownership took from Minneapolis Homes, and then the last amendment and this one are the 2 that take from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund allocation this year, which was supported in part by local affordable housing aid along with the community development block grant. So of the $3.8 million that are invested in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, there's $830,000 that are taken in this amendment, and then an additional $810,000 taken in the Senior Housing Code Abatement Amendment, so about $1.6 million.
Okay, 1.6 million out of what,
3.8.
Yeah, 3.8. I can't.
No, it's like 18 million, 17.9 million, but like total.
In the Affordable Housing Trust Fund?
Yes.
I'm happy to, if we could have Director Hansen maybe clarify
Director
for us.
Hansen, would you like to come back up?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Ellison, I am getting my spreadsheet up. If you could give me a moment, I'll.
Take your time.
Yeah. Our housing director is talking about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund at this moment.
I apologize. So this is in the budget book. I
Yep.
overlooked this. So
Okay.
the total budget of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is $17.9 million.
Yep.
So it's $18 million approximately. And then this is the new funding. I apologize.
Got it. So I guess I'll support this here. I just want us to all be mindful that we are going to be facing cliffs with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in the next couple of years, and to understand that we're seeing a slowdown. Like we're seeing a halt in new construction of market rate. We're seeing a slowdown even of housing that we're paying for, that governments are paying for and subsidizing, and that while I've always been skeptical of the build more strategy, it's not. There is something to it, right? It can't. I don't think it can solve the whole problem, but there is something to it, and so we've got to put ourselves in a position to not slow that down too much. $1.6 million is of housing that we could leverage, or of dollars that we could leverage. Is a lot of money, and so I just want us to think about it in those terms and understand the implications or of these kinds of cuts. And I know that we've grown accustomed here in the last 5 years of seeing these large numbers in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That's going to end, and I want us to be mindful of that.
Councilmember Ellison, the one thing I will note as part of what you're outlining, which agree with completely, is we have received a gift, which of new money through the local affordable housing aid. The sales tax, the Metro sales tax. And what we have seen in the recommended budget this year is all of that being used for for existing programs, whether that's the Affordable Housing Trust Fund or Minneapolis Homes. And so we don't really have the ability to look at new money and determine the best ways to use that in accordance with the guidance given to us by the state, because it's being used for existing programs. So I just think about that a little bit differently, but point is very well noted. Anything else? All right. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Palmisano, followed by Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start by saying I have been the biggest champion of stable homes, stable schools. Back in the beginning of it, I think that was right at the beginning of Councilmember Ellison's tenure here. People were very skeptical about it at the time. Notably, the council president at the time, former Councilmember Lisa Goodman, were very skeptical of this. I would say, as I've always said, that this type of assistance is one of the best ways the city can partner with our public school system during these times, during these financial times. It's in our lane. I always say, here's the difference between the city and Minneapolis public schools. We need to do everything in our power to help kids show up to school ready to learn. And having a stable place to live is one of those things. That said, this doesn't feel like a pilot. We're several years into this program. This is because you don't have the ongoing money to support it. Combined with the previous amendment, as mentioned, this decreases our Affordable Housing Trust Fund by $1.64 million. This is nearly half of the new spending for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This means that 50 less affordable housing units will be produced and preserved through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund program. I appreciate the pitfalls of this that Councilmember Ellison mentioned. I'm a little surprised that right after that you'd say, but you'll support this, because I have the same concerns, but I can't support this. One-time spending on a pilot isn't sustainable. We have to plan for how we can financially support a potential program. If the pilot, which we're not seeming to measure, we don't need to measure it, this is a successful, proven program, then we cut it. But what if it is successful and we have to reduce services elsewhere because we have not appropriately planned for this? There are long-term implications to the budget need to be considered as we debate these programs. We have several amendments behind and ahead of us that are adding more funds to pilots. We need to have a plan for what we will do with these pilots, but you've taken a lot of that general fund money for other amendments this year. This particular program is not just ours. It involves many external partners like the Public Housing Authority, Hennepin County, MPS, and the YMCA. What we do impacts them too. I have questions for, Director Anderson Kelleher or Director Hansen if he's behind this post where I cannot see. Director Hansen, are these external partners on board and supportive with this amendment that funds its expansion into these two different groups?
Welcome back.
Vice President Chugtai, Councilmember Palmisano, we have a very strong partnership with the Stable Homes, Stable Schools group. The expansion, we're working on strategic planning for that program and the expansion into this age group. We have not evaluated that with those partners in full yet. So we still have to see what that program would be and how we would expand eligibility to preschool kids. So I don't have probably a satisfying answer because we don't know the answer.
Sure. Well, I would add that the way that many children get tracked into this program they would go through an MPS school, and a social worker helps to identify kids that need this kind of help. We don't really have that in a preschool program, to my knowledge.
Councilmember Palmisano, Councilmember Chowdhury can address your question. Would you like her to do that?
I'm happy to have her address my question, but I have some more things to say. So given your new time limits, I'm going to just keep my time, and I'm happy to listen to that kind of a response. I don't know if this existing program is even on sound financial footing, and I'm curious if Director Hansen wants to mention anything about that. Do we have the capacity to support this expansion without unintentionally undermining the existing program?
Councilmember Chugtai, Councilmember Palmisano, I'm not sure what the impact of this amendment will be on the overall program. I can't give you the answer.
That's concerning to me. Colleagues, when we expand our Stable Homes, Stable Schools program, it's a big deal. There are many press conferences about it. It has all of those partners at the table. It's a big deal. This way to throw money at it is the most irresponsible way, and to children. This, in my opinion, is worse than the previous amendment because you're moving families around with zero promise that they will stay in the same place next year. Just like the seniors in the previous amendment, you're pitching new programs with one-time spending and without any plan on how you will sustain that program. Stable Homes, Stable Schools expansion, something we'd like to do eventually. Spending down reserves now and facing a cliff to maintain it at its current level is just incredibly irresponsible, and it makes these children more vulnerable than they are today.
Thank you. Councilmember Palmisano, would you still like to have Councilmember Chowdhury address your outstanding question?
I would be happy to.
Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a moment where we really can support our kids. Again, 30% increase in homelessness, and that's why we have had conversations with MPHA, who did the work of connecting with partners and giving us the data-driven information around how these are the pilots that can be expanded next and that these are identified to core needs. So this was done in preparation and in conversation with MPHA to ensure that they would be able to take on this funding. MPS is also aware of this. And I just wanted to make that note to insinuate that this isn't that this is happening haphazardly without any conversation with the partners at the table is just false. There have been those conversations. While I can understand the question about one-time funding, I am happy to continue in future budget cycles to figure out how we can.
Councilmember Chowdhury, Councilmember Palmisano's time has expired.
Thank you.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Chavez, followed by Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Council Vice President Chuck. I just want to be clear, this isn't throwing money around. We actually worked on this proposal with MPHA. This was a well-thought-out proposal. And when there is a 30% increase in homelessness in Minneapolis Public Schools, we should be having deep conversations about how we as a body are going to address those concerns. I know that we're talking about potentially 50 units of affordable housing being impacted, but with this program, an additional 180 to 225 families, representing 440 to 565 children, could be served by this. That is also a very good thing that we should be talking about and figuring out how we can support when there are many new arrivals in the city coming in that are being impacted by homelessness, that want to get support and have a place to sleep at night. Now, the other thing I think is I do hear the concerns that some of my colleagues are talking about, specifically about the impact on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I hear what Councilmember Ellison particularly is talking about. But I do want to say that a lot of this new funding is from the local housing aid tax. The mayor's administration decides to put the majority of that funding towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund instead of just keeping the Affordable Housing Trust Fund the same way. So there was a backfill. And what I'm saying is that moving forward, I think that the city council and the mayor should instead be working together, figure out what we can all agree with, and move forward together as one body on the local housing aid tax. That way we don't have this discussion on the dais. But in the absence of collaboration and in the absence of that work that we did not do together, this is what we resulted in doing. So I agree that we should minimize the impact on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but the only reason there's an impact is because that new money was used to literally backfill other funding, essentially. I'm not calling you up.
Thank you. Thank you all. Councilmember Chavez, do you have anything else to add?
That was it.
Wonderful. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really interested in hearing what Ms. DeSenza has to say in response. My primary question, however, is have we funded all of the Minneapolis Public Schools children that need this program? Before we begin to expand to preschools and middle schools, et cetera. And, you know, one of the main things that I hear from people is that, you know, children that go to charter schools are experiencing homelessness as well. So, I mean, I would like to have much more conversation about how do we address all of those issues, but I would certainly like to ask Ms. DeSenza to come up and share her thoughts on this.
Welcome, Director DeSenza. If you'll first begin by introducing yourself.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai. Jane DeSenza, Budget Director. The reason that I wanted to come up and clarify is because it's really important how we talk about these external revenue sources. The state was very clear that we were not to supplant existing programming or funding, and we were careful not to do that. The way the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has been funded with the general fund in the past is by one-time appropriations. And as you all know, we had a really difficult general fund situation this year. And so instead of topping up the Affordable Housing Trust Fund with general fund, we used the new revenue source to maintain a pretty consistent level of funding for Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Is there any response to the questions that I posed?
Councilmember Chowdhury, would you like to address the question?
Would you be able to rephrase
Sure.
the question, Councilmember?
Well, I'll repeat it. Have we served all the children in Minneapolis Public Schools now? And then subsequently, how do we expand this to charter schools? Those young people are calling me saying, those families are saying, we need support too.
Thank you, Councilmember, through the chair. What I can answer today is that this is a program that's specifically partnered with Minneapolis Public Schools and students and families with Minneapolis Public Schools, so not students that are outside of Minneapolis Public Schools. So that's what this funding would go towards. We wanted to look at a program that's existing and name the need that MPS alerted us to, around 30% increase in student homelessness this last year.
Councilmember Jenkins, if it's helpful, I think COO Anderson Kelleher can potentially address pieces of your question as well.
Yeah, that would be great. That didn't answer my question, but...
Heard. Welcome. If you'll first begin by introducing yourself.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Chugtai. Margaret Anderson Kelleher, COO for the City of Minneapolis. The question, I believe, that wasn't answered as part of that is the question about have all Minneapolis Public School students who would be eligible been served by stable homes, stable schools? And the answer is no.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to offer a quick response to Councilmember Jenkins as well, just to say that there are a lot of elementary schools in Ward 7. A lot of them have a lot of new arrivals in them, specifically from Latin America, and that there's a large group of parents and families that are experiencing homelessness and attending the schools in my ward that are elementary schools. So I can just, from that perspective, and I went to their site council meeting last night at Emerson and actually heard about this. So it's very fresh for me that this is a need and that we're not serving all the families that do need this in MPS.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Osman, followed by Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, authors. I appreciate the intention, the work that you have put in here. Yes, there's a lot of kids that are facing homelessness, and it's really wonderful for us to think about that and make sure that we are preventing the homelessness. But this program, Affordable Housing Trust Fund, has existed in our city for a while, and it's very important. It's a project that takes a long process and has helped many families in our city, and I feel very uncomfortable for taking money away. And also, it's one-time funding for Minneapolis public schools students. So I will be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, I will recognize Councilmember Palmisano, and then we'll call the roll on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We were serving about 10% of the eligible population in MPS public schools. And with a recent expansion that I think I had the opportunity to announce with Abdi Warsami, the director of the Minneapolis Housing Authority, and a couple of school board commissioners, recently increased it to 20 to 25% of the eligible population in Minneapolis public schools. It's not really about how many schools they are in, but how many they can serve. No, charter schools have not yet been on the table. In part, I think it's about having a structure to route kids in need through appropriate networks with the social workers right now across MPS public schools. But the short-term assistance that we have, like stabilization assistance, is available at all schools, but the longer-term rental assistance program is not yet in every Minneapolis public school. So my point being, let's work to grow this program in the way that it was meant to be grown. The genesis of this was Mayor Fry's initial work. It was his signature program. Every mayor often has a signature program. This was his. You will not serve these kids in the long run if you overextend ourselves too early. I think we need a more thoughtful approach here. I think the approach that we have been able to increase it is there are kids with needs that we already know about, and we can only serve a small portion of them. Let's continue expanding into that space. One of the benefits that we learned about Stable Homes, Stable Schools is that this program ended up serving far more children in our community than initially thought, and it was because of the number of children that they expected these families in need to have. There's often a lot more children in one family that this program then serves with one stable dwelling, one stable home than originally planned. So it serves a lot of children. I don't want to quote the number, but we should get that number because it's impressive. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Not seeing any further discussion. We have the Stable Homes, Stable Schools Expansion Pilot Program amendment offered by Council members Chavez, Payne, and Chowdhury before us. I will ask the clerk to call the roll on amendment number 32.
Councilmember Payne.
Aye.
Wansley.
Aye.
Rainville.
Nay.
Vita.
No.
Ellison.
Aye.
Osman.
No.
Cashman.
Aye.
Jenkins.
Nay.
Chavez.
Aye.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Palmisano.
No.
Vice Chair Kosky.
Aye.
Chair Chugtai.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes and 5 nays.
That motion carries. Next, we will move to amendment number 33, which we have a revised version of that amendment that was brought over by the clerks this morning. Amendment number 33 is the Public Safety Improvement Low Barrier Employment Pilot Program, and it is offered by Council members Chavez, Osman, and Wansley. Council member Chavez, please introduce your amendment and move approval.
Thank you, Council Vice President Chugtai. I'm authoring this with Councilmember Osman and Councilmember Wansley, which is modeled after a St. Paul program. This pilot program is designed to improve public safety by helping employ adults encountering homelessness or housing instability with sustainable low barrier work and income, and helping improve cleanliness in neighborhoods. This program will create teams of workers who will focus on cleaning up an area while getting paid. It also addresses a gap in our system where there aren't many low barrier job opportunities. Some of this funding will go towards helping establish and administer the program with services including background checks, securing vital documents, needed employment, conducting day employment and community projects, and paying living wages. There is a new amendment or a revised version in front of you that will instead put this in the Public Works Special Service District after talking to our COO, Anderson Kelleher. So with that, colleagues, I'd move this for approval.
Councilmember Chavez has moved approval of the revised amendment number 33. Is there a second to his motion?
Second.
That item has been properly moved and seconded. Colleagues, is there any discussion or questions from the committee? I will recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some concerns about this one. Again, this is another pilot with one-time funding. Are we prepared for the financial implications of this kind of a program? How will we sustain this? I might ask to the main author or the authors. We've had to watch the basic income pilot program sunset because it was funded with one-time ARPA funds. I'm not saying it wasn't a good idea. I'm just saying it was used with we funded it with one-time federal COVID pandemic money. I don't want to have to take a program away from people again because we can't sustain it. I want to keep that guaranteed basic income program going. It seemed to have some very favorable results. But in order to do this or any of these other ideas, we need a long-term plan. This is the third consecutive amendment that does exactly that. In this case, it uses money from the community safety center pilots. So what this budget amendment does is it just chooses a pilot. Despite all of the updates that we've received from Director Harrington on how we're progressing with these different community safety center services and programs, we're just going to take and label it for this. This uses the same source. I think the total for amendments 12, 14, and 33 are over $1 million from the safety center pilot. We all were really big supporters of that. Many of you were at the opening event of the center. I do believe Commissioner Barnett has stated that he just can't predict how this kind of a decrease will impact community safety center pilots. But $1 million is a large portion of that funding. I'm not sure how much of the funding it is, but I would invite Commissioner Barnett up to give any other further comments he might have about it. And as he does come up, I'll say this and other amendments, Commissioner, have taken over $1 million from the Community Safety Center pilot program, and this doesn't have the same kind of look and evaluation that you've been having and your department employees have been having with these programs. So I'm curious how you react to amendments like this.
Welcome, Commissioner. If you will first begin by introducing yourself.
Good morning. I'm Todd Barnett, Commissioner of Community Safety for the City of Minneapolis. Chair Chuck Tye, Council Member Palmisano. It's the same statement that I made at previous budget hearings. We really don't know the cumulative impact, but of course, each time we earmark or take funding away, it limits our ability to further do the things that we want to do when we have the NYU gap and access analysis that we're trying to implementing the Safe and Thriving Community Report. You know, as we're being intentional about the way we want to look at engaging community, what does the community want? How do we get that service in that particular community? So it definitely, like I said yesterday, don't know the impact yet. There's a lot of budget amendments here that are lessening, that lessens our flexibility in what we're trying to do. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, what I'm hearing is confirmation of what I suspected. It's the same, similar to what he said yesterday. We are hamstringing our community safety center efforts with these budget amendments. And then just in terms of programs, I mean, I do think the Guaranteed Basic Income program is a good example. It sunset this year with barely a whisper. Is that the kind of government that we are choosing to be here? That we offer these great programs, we have to do, you know, the initial marketing and availability and application process that goes through it, and then we're just going to cut them off? I'm not going to speak to amendments that have already been done and sorted in the past, but this is another one of those. I don't think it's wise. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Chavez, followed by Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Council Vice President Chuck Tye. I just want to make some clarifications here. I'm not sure where the word sunsetting that pilot occurred, because we all voted to actually allow CPED to continue the program a couple weeks ago. So we all voted for that. You voted for that, Councilmember Palmisano. I initially was going to use that funding for a different program, this same exact program, after multiple conversations with Public Works and CPED, but they told me they wanted to continue it next year. So I didn't touch that funding for this program because they're going to continue it next year. So I don't know where the sunset conversation is coming from. Secondly, we should all hope that pilot programs are successful. It means that there's a deep concern and a gap in our community, quite frankly. We should hope that these programs work, and if they don't, we try something different. But what I will say, though, is that this body almost took away the entire $4 million over the summer from the Community Safety Center and put it and redirected it to the police union contract and other services. So it's hard for me to hear the concerns about taking some of the money for this Community Safety Center when this body almost took the entire $4 million, redirected it to the police union contract and other services. We're going to be okay. There is still going to be $3 million for the Community Safety Center in the 3rd Precinct. But it's very hard for me to hear and take those concerns seriously when that vote happened this summer. we're going to be okay.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Jenkins, followed by Councilmember Osman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We just learned yesterday that Public Works has 20-plus positions that they are desperately trying to hire for. It seems to me we could be directing people to that program. And I guess at the risk of inflaming this body, we offered this very community, Southside Green Zone, an entire public works training program through the Roof Depot project, and it was rejected. So, we know there's a need in this community, but using one-time funds to address this really critical need of employment just doesn't seem responsible to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any further discussion. Councilmember Palmisano.
I just wanted to say, my bad, about the basic income pilot. We did take a vote to continue it, but to my knowledge, I don't think we appropriated any money toward it. So I guess I'm curious, how is this program continuing, or with what amount of money? And it looks like maybe our budget director is the person that can best help me answer that question.
Welcome back, Director DeSenza.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai. Councilmember Palmisano. The vote that the council took in November related to GBI was to continue the ability for CPED to do surveys for people who had received guaranteed basic income payments during the active period of the program. There are no longer any families receiving the monthly payments for that program.
Thank you. So we're continuing to survey them to see how they do over time. We're studying the money that we deployed, but we are not continuing that guaranteed basic income program.
All right, seeing no further discussion, we have the Public Safety Improvement Low Barrier Employment Pilot Program as revised in front of us, before us. I will ask the clerk to call the roll on amendment number 33 as revised.
Councilmember Payne.
Aye.
Wansley. Aye. Rainville.
No.
Vita.
No.
Ellison.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Cashman.
Aye.
Jenkins.
Nay.
Chavez.
Aye.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Palmisano.
No.
Vice Chair Koski.
Aye.
Chair Chugtai.
Aye.
There are 9 ayes and 4 nays.
That motion carries. Next, we will move to amendment number 34, which is the revised safe outdoor space program for safe parking specifically. And this amendment was revised this morning to reduce the total amount from $100,000 down to $98,664. That $1.3 thousand discrepancy prevents a layoff from happening. So that's why we made that adjustment. The clerks alerted me that in the motion itself, there's an error in the increase to the Regulatory Services Department. That number should not be $100,000. It should be $98,664. The clerks will note that, but we are, in the interest of saving paper, we're not going to be reprinting right now at their request. I will briefly introduce this item and move its approval. So this amendment allows for, it goes hand in hand with the process the council is undergoing right now in crafting a safe outdoor space and safe parking ordinance to be implemented in 2025. But this sets aside some resources so that planning can begin as we move through our legislative process. A safe parking ordinance is unique in that it allows those who are living out of their vehicles, that's the way in which they're experiencing homelessness, to be in an authorized space and receive access to a safe place to stay, along with without creating intrusions or being in residential areas. It allows people access to showers and bathrooms, access to Wi-Fi, and then supportive services like, working to get into more permanent and stable housing. This program would be modeled off of off of the successes that the city of Duluth has seen. Their program cost the city of Duluth about $150,000, but knowing that this year is the ordinance itself will take some time to craft, we decided to be a little bit more conservative and allocate just about $100,000 to this program here in Minneapolis. And with that, I will move approval of this item and ask for a second.
Second.
The item has been properly moved and seconded. Colleagues, are there any questions or discussion? I will recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to point out this amendment requires laying off one staff person currently in the Security Division of Finance and Property Services. Is that correct, or can you correct me on it?
That is not correct. There is the mobile security team proposal creates 4 positions. Currently, there are three of these 4 positions are filled. This one position is general fund. Is supported by the general fund in the year 2025, and it is vacant right now. So the $98,664 are to use for this pilot, but it is taken one time. So starting 2026, this position will be funded by an internal service fund. So this is not removing an FTE. It is maintaining the status quo right now.
I see. Actually, I was looking at the wrong one. I was looking at the one in our bound book. This is the one that was put on the dais
That's
this
right.
morning. Can you tell me a little bit about what this vacant position is supposed to do? I see it's currently vacant. I mean, I know people who are actively interviewing for positions in finance and property services. What were the benefits of this position, though it might be vacant now?
I would invite you to confer with the Finance and Property Services Department about that in more specificity. However, I will say that this position is vacant, has been vacant, and there are 3 positions that are at that same level that are filled right now, and so there isn't a cut to an existing service. This position is also not being cut on an ongoing basis. We're just using the general fund allocation one time this year. This position will be available to the department to hire beginning again in 2026, or if they make any other changes or adjustments to their budget currently.
So I see Director Jelly here in the audience, and it seemed like the gestures said that he might be the best person to respond. In terms of what is it we are decreasing here when we remove this position? Again, you said it's not currently filled, and a little bit weirdly to me, this is just a one-time pilot again, so we're going to create this safe outdoor space, but we're not going to keep it. Director Jelly, could you tell us a little bit about this Finance and Property Services position?
Deputy City Operations Officer Jelly, if you'll first begin by introducing yourself.
Good morning, council members, Chair Chugtai and Council Member Palmisano. Brett Jelly, Deputy City Operations Officer in the Office of Public Service. Included in the departmental proposals for 2025 were additional city security staff. One of the reasons for the proposal, the primary reason, is part of our homelessness response within the Department of Regulatory Services utilizes city security officers to monitor and respond as needed to city-owned property. There is a component of private security that's a little bit different, but for city-owned property, these employees help respond as needed.
So would you say that this type of security position maybe helps to prevent encampments from forming on city property in response to newly formed encampments?
Chair Chugtai, Councilmember Palmisano, yes.
It feels like they work in collaboration with our homeless response team. Is that fair, or?
Chair Chugtai, Councilmember Palmisano, yes. There's a high degree of coordination with the homeless response team.
So, Madam Chair, I would say, isn't this the goal? Isn't our goal to provide services to people experiencing homelessness and make referrals early on? Why would we instead want to use this position to have people live in undignified conditions? We need an offset. There are a lot of people outside sleeping in their cars on any given night in the city. But is this the trade-off that we're making? This doesn't feel responsible. We need the people from our city to help provide services to people experiencing homelessness, to make referrals to actual housing early on, and taking that to say this is acceptable feels, it doesn't feel right. Thank you.
To address your specific question, Councilmember Palmisano, there are a few cities, peer cities to ours, that have implemented a safe outdoor space or safe parking policy. The two examples I'll point to here are the city of Denver and the city of Duluth here in Minnesota. And in both examples, what they have found is the establishment of policy like this and the establishment of a program like this helps accelerate the process of providing those who do not have a permanent place to live with services and with the supports that they need in order to transition into more permanent housing. And so this is an investment in a policy that has worked in other places and in cities that have similar climates to ours, so that we can meaningfully and in a systemic and long-term way address the issue of unsheltered homelessness.
Madam Chair, is this time still mine?
Nope, we're on mine now.
Or mine.
Looks as though you've skipped over Councilmember Osmond. I'll go back in queue then.
Great. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Osmond, followed by Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you. We all know we have a homeless crisis, and I see this part of the solution. Preventing encampments, it's helpful to the residents and to the folks that live there. It's something I have supported, and I made it very clear. But this is someone, a council member, who's putting forward a solution to say, what can we do to help the crisis we have in our city? I have not seen administration trying to find a way to bring a solution. Yes, we can create housing, we can figure out programs and different things like that, but the encampments that are forming our communities, the unsafe conditions they are at, the unsafe neighbors, how unsafe neighbors feel, we have to figure out a way to be creative and figure out a way to really establish what can we do to help folks here. How can they be safe and neighbors feel safe? And safe parking pilot program kind of excites me. I want to see those kind of ideas coming from the administration and people in leadership. We are not going to fix things, continue to evicting folks. You are costing money, taxpayers' money, and put a solution forward or support the solutions council members have brought it forward and test it out. I really wanted to say that we are facing crisis. Encampments are unsafe for folks that live in the encampments and also folks that live surrounding encampments. and we're wasting so much money for security. We're wasting so much money for eviction, so much money for our staff, so much time for our staff to continue to evict. But I have not seen the solution. We need a solution from every one in the administration, also on the council members. Other cities are figuring out a way to deal with this crisis. And at the end of the day, these are human beings. We are in leadership position, and we have to be able to model other cities and see what works for them. I really want to see that, and hopefully we can start fresh next year and find some solutions. We want everyone to be safe in our neighborhood, and also the folks that live there to be safe in our neighborhood. But this is part of the solution, and I appreciate for council members thinking about this and establishing this. If it doesn't work, great, we can switch gears and figure out another way. But if it works, then let's just invest it and make sure we're bringing solutions instead of just pushing away everything that comes forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, I will recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just heard I don't see the administration finding solutions, except for all the housing and programs that they already are doing, of which we are taking money away from for
encampments, ma'am.
For our other needs. We do a lot to address encampments in our city, and we use a lot of funds with which to do it. In fact, Director Velasquez was up here yesterday explaining our new approach. I'll start by saying it's nearly impossible to keep track of all these last-minute changes here on the dais. I don't see the staffing model for Duluth or Denver. I've studied Duluth pretty extensively. Are you looking to have this in a city-owned parking lot, in church parking lots, or somewhere else in our city? I'll ask any of the authors of this amendment.
That'll be determined by what is included in the ordinance, which is in the process of being crafted right now.
Okay, well, you're making a choice here to say we're less interested in helping residents experiencing homelessness get into permanent housing. And again, it's an idea with just 1 year of funding, and we're using one FTE in it. Is that enough? Does the Denver model really just use one single staff person who keeps people in a parking lot safe all night without a supervisor? Is that person going to be supervised directly by DCOO Jelly? Like, I don't really see the ability of us standing up a whole ordinance and taking it on and funding it temporarily for just 1 year in 2025. We have a very careful approach to how we are helping to end homelessness in our city, and we have made progress on that. This feels a bit reactionary, and I agree, we need some place, we need some safe way for the people who already are living in their vehicles overnight. But this is just not a dignified approach, and it's very haphazard to say everybody should come here because we're going to keep it safe, but then we're going to have to remove it. At the end of this season, at the end of next year? When?
Colleagues, we have the revised Safe Outdoor Space Program Safe Parking Amendment offered by Council Members Chowdhury, Chavez, and myself before us. I will ask the clerk to call the roll on the revised amendment number 34.
Councilmember Payne.
Aye.
Wansley.
Aye.
Rainville.
Nay.
Vita.
No.
Ellison.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Cashman.
Aye.
Jenkins.
Aye.
Chavez.
Aye.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Palmisano.
No.
Vice Chair Koski.
Aye.
Chair Chuktai.
Aye.
There are 10 ayes and 3 nays.
That motion carries. Amendment number 35 is from Councilmember Ellison. It is related to Healthy Homes proactive enforcement and includes a legislative directive. Councilmember Ellison, please introduce and move approval of your amendment, including the legislative directive.
Thank you. This is to put $500,000 into the Healthy Homes program, which is our proactive lead remediation program. Where it's using the ARPA rollover dollars it allows us to continue the work that we've done to get ahead of childhood lead poisoning and those types of things. We put in a historic amount of funding a couple of years ago, utilizing ARPA actually is what enabled us to do that. But we had staff who were championing this program and educating council members for a long time, but and in those 25 years, it never quite had the level of funding that it got at the start of ARPA. And I would love to see, I know that we have about $500,000 in the fund right now, a little over. I know that staff have about $1.5 million that they could go in and remedy. And I would love to get that fund up to $1 million so that we can at least start to address some of the properties that we're able to service and not be cut short here by quite the gap that we're seeing. So happy to answer any questions about it. Also happy to not answer any questions about it. But that's the purpose. And I guess I'll say, I guess the last thing I'll say is I know that as a city, we see all this new construction happening, and and people are under the impression that a lot of the housing in Minneapolis is newer housing. 80% of the housing units all across our city are built before lead paint was banned, and so we have lead in so many structures all across our city. And I know that maybe selfishly, Councilmember Vita and I talk about the issue as it exists in wards 4 and 5, but this is not a ward 4 and 5 issue alone. This is an issue that persists all across the city, and so while we're always happy to see these dollars go to wards 4 and 5, this is something that I think we all can collaborate on and join hand in hand on to address across the city.
Councilmember Ellison has moved approval of amendment number 35. Is there a second to his motion?
Second.
That item has been properly moved and seconded. Colleagues, are there any questions or discussion related to this item? I will first recognize Councilmember Jenkins, followed by Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do support this this amendment by Councilmember Ellison. I've been working on lead abatement for about 25 years, and so was really thrilled with the increase in funding. I thought that the infrastructure bill provided some funding specifically for lead abatement in homes, and I have to point out that, we delayed the George Floyd Square project, which would have removed lead pipes from the street infrastructure that impacts so many families in a community that has largely homes built in the early 1920s. And so, if we're going to be concerned about these issues, we have to think about the whole entire universe of how these kinds of things are impacting people. So, I wanted to share those comments. I will support this amendment today, but hopefully we can be more comprehensive in our thought process around some of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Palmisano, followed by Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think that Councilmember Ellison really thought I wouldn't have any questions. He's a smart guy. I also support this amendment. I'd like to point out that this is the second, though, of 4 amendments that use the ARPA revenue replacement funding as its source. This source was otherwise proposed to reduce the property tax levy by another 0.15%, but this body voted against that proposal in order to propose new programming that will increase our total budget substantially. That amendment to reduce that tax levy with the other opportunity to use these dollars is the only budget amendment that we have not approved thus far. Even if not used this year for levy reduction, the funds could fall to the bottom line and it could pay down next year's levy proposal. So we are declining 2 chances to lower the levy for our residents, for business owners, and for property owners. So I just need to be clear about that. The questions that I have about this program might be for COO Anderson Kelleher, or actually I see Director Chaplin here, and Director Hanlon, who I think runs this program. So I understand this is a program that's implemented by both health and regulatory services. I'm curious if someone could please explain each department's role in that, and it seems Director Hanlon is the best equipped to give us an explanation of Reg Services and Health's role in this program.
Deputy Commissioner Hanlon, welcome. If you'll first begin by introducing yourself.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Hanlon. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Sustainability, Healthy Homes, and Environment in the Health Department. Madam Chair, Councilmember Palmisano. So yeah, we work in close collaboration. The ARPA dollars, as Councilmember Ellison mentioned, has allowed us to expand a lot of our programming and get into homes. The term we use is that children aren't lead detectors. So we're getting in and doing a lot of preventative work. And most of the properties, I think around 70% of the properties that we work with are rental properties. And so we're working in collaboration with our rental licensing inspectors and our inspectors who, and our staff who have experience and training in lead and healthy homes, lead inspections. So yeah, it's a close collaboration. And there was also a point made about Public Works. We also work in partnership with Public Works around some of the lead service line replacement. And so making sure we're doing this work in collaboration.
So then, Director Hanlon, will we be able to increase our pace of lead line replacement with this funding allocation?
Madam Chair.
Is that the intent, I guess, from the author?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Palmisano, they're separate programs and they run on separate timelines. We do partner and make sure that we're aware of the hazards of lead exposure.
I see. Well, this funding is going entirely to health. So will Reg Services be able to increase their capacity or maybe keep their increased capacity that they had been to partner with this effort?
Madam
We're
Chair.
We're not giving them any money to do so is what I'm trying to point out.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Palmisano. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the limiting factors that we have. So and to go beyond this, I think we need to have conversations about building capacity with Reg Services, and I think we're all in agreement. We know this is a tough budget year, and so the money that the mayor's office put into this program to keep our staffing here and to keep that base unit, have some programming, and we could really scale up or scale down depending on where council wanted to go with this. But yeah, that's the Reg Services capacity would be the next step of this in future years.
In future years. So for next year's budget amendments, Councilmember Ellison, you'll still be here then. I'm just pointing that out. I fully support active mitigation of lead in our homes. I do wish this were from an alternative funding source so that we could reduce our budget for residents of Minneapolis accordingly, but I do support active mitigation of lead in our homes, and thank you for bringing this forward.
Seeing no further discussion, colleagues, we have the Healthy Homes Proactive Enforcement Amendment offered by Councilmember Ellison before us. I will ask the clerk to call the roll on amendment number 35.
Councilmember Payne.
Aye.
Wansley.
Aye.
Rainville.
Aye.
Vito.
Aye.
Ellison.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Cashman.
Aye.
Jenkins.
Aye.
Chavez.
Aye.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
Vice Chair Koski.
Aye.
Chair Chuktai.
Aye.
There are 13 ayes.
That motion carries. And next is amendment number 36, which is offered by Council President Payne, Council members Ellison, Chowdhury, Wansley, myself, Osman, and Chavez. Council President Payne, will you please introduce and move approval of your amendment?
Thank you, Vice President Chuktai. Yeah, this amendment is $50,000 to study a social housing project. I'll make a distinction between social housing and public housing. Public housing is a HUD-funded federal program with fair cloth limits, whereas social housing would be housing developed by a local jurisdiction using the same tools as the private market would use, even nonprofits. So whether it's LIHTC, Affordable Housing Trust Fund, or going straight to banks in the private market, leveraging some of those financial tools to build housing directly that's can be sustainably affordable because it's not as subject to the market conditions. I'm moving this from the racial equity framework proposal. This was about $385,000 set aside to do some internal work around racial equity. I actually have a lot of faith in our racial equity team to do that work directly rather than to contract it out. And this is going to be going to our policy and research team. We all maybe got some outreach from renter advocacy groups, and they were seeking perhaps an exploration on what would be the right entity to do this body of work. There is a model of this being done in Washington County, so a county level government could be appropriate. We have MPHA that this aligns with really well. We have folks in CPED that this aligns with really well. So this is we want to explore before we go head in with this, which, you know, in my ideal world, we would just make a commitment and build some housing and see how that goes. But I think doing this in the more measured and researched way is appropriate in this instance. And so asking for my colleagues' support.
Council President Payne has moved approval of amendment number 36. Is there a second?
Second.
That item has been properly moved and seconded. Colleagues, is there any discussion or questions related to this item? I see a couple of members in queue. I will note that this is one of 3 amendments that is sourced using the racial equity framework change item. And the total of those 3 amendments is the total of the racial equity framework proposal. With that, I will recognize Council Member Rainville.
Thank you. I'm wondering if one of the authors, preferably Council President Payne, could just explain a little bit more what social housing is. I know that Senator Smith, I had an opportunity to talk to her about her idea. What is the author's ideas of social housing?
Council President Payne, would you like to address that question?
Yeah, thank you, Vice President Chugtai, and thank you, Councilmember Rainville. Social housing would be leveraging some of the same tools that the private market leverages, whether that's financing from a traditional lender or LIHTC, Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and instead of awarding those funds to a specific developer based on a competitive bid, it would say, the purpose of this study is to say what would be the right local entity to take this work on. So it could be Hennepin County, it could be the city of Minneapolis, it could be MPHA, or it could be maybe a whole new organization that could be stood up for this specific purpose to do the site development and construction of new housing that could be perpetually affordable because it would be owned and operated by that entity.
So you're talking about a housing land trust model, is that?
No, it's not the same as a housing land trust model, although I think there are elements of a housing land trust that could align with this idea. The idea here is to either build new housing or even, you know, I have a nursing home that's been abandoned in my ward since 2020 that the city could purchase and renovate and convert into an SRO and own and operate it. So it would be a perpetually affordable source of housing that isn't as subject to market pressures.
So this would be more government-owned housing?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Council Member Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I read with interest Senator Smith's op-ed piece that was reprinted in the Star Tribune a couple months ago. It was with AOC. And it was before this last election, and it sounded really promising. I want to share that our REIB department, Race, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, is a small department, and it really can't withstand a reduction like this without a significant loss of service. The supporting materials for this amendment, as long as I have the current one, says this will not have an impact on existing services with this source coming from new spending and taking a minimal amount from this new spending proposal. But But my understanding is that this is one of 3 amendments, 36, 46, and 64, as of last night, using this funding source, and the totality of amendments at $385,000 completely guts this entire line of work with race, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So to the authors, am I accurate in that? It seems that that's the intent here. Is that true?
Council President Payne, would you like to address that?
That's not the intent of this specific amendment, and I can't speak to others' amendments that are tapping into it. One of mine does also tap into it. I didn't realize as I was drafting mine, other folks were sourcing here, but at the end of the day, that was not the intent.
So similar to the mounted patrol sources as uses of funds, I don't think it's fair just to put all of the impact on like the first budget amendment and then continue to say, well, this particular initiative or whatever is decimated, so now let's just take the rest of it and that's all right. According to the budget book, it says implementing a racial equity framework in Minneapolis is crucial for addressing systemic barriers, reducing racial disparities, and fostering inclusivity in housing, education, employment, climate action, and community safety. If we want to truly become an anti-racist city enterprise in all things, the work of our racial equity framework leads us to that goal. Are we really willing to jeopardize that by abandoning this work? That's a question to the authors. Are we willing to abandon this work?
Council President Payne, would you like to address that question?
I am glad to answer that question. 2 things. One, we have a fully capable staff within REIB, even some holding PhDs that I think have the capacity to do this work directly rather than contracting it out. That's part 1. Part 2, as we talk about this larger topic of systemic racism and being anti-racist, I mean, speaking as the Black president of this body, I think that part of a racial equity framework is being able to have a clear lens on what the impact of these types of decisions have through a racial equity lens. And I think that the diversity of this body puts us in a different position as it relates to how we understand some of these impacts at a structural level. And also, like I said, a lot of this work is to guide internal enterprise work rather than necessarily external facing, but I do believe that the housing crisis does disproportionately impact Black and brown marginalized identities in our city. And as we look at for $1 invested of taxpayer money into closing equity gaps, I think closing the gap of housing would be quite impactful for our community.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that it seems that we can do the racial equity framework just here internally. I think we had been trying to do that for a number of years here unsuccessfully. And this was an opportunity to get some outside help on it and an outside look in. Well, the social housing study might be interesting. It is very interesting to me. I'm curious what the results of that kind of a study would say. I cannot support what ends up being the total removal of the race equity framework proposal. Thank you.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Vitoff, followed by Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair. I have similar concerns. You know, this council has talked a lot about the importance of the race equity and belonging department's work, and I myself have been looking forward to seeing how that all plays out. I've been critical of this department and wondering what the specifics are, and I just think it's poor timing to now remove funding from this department when we're supposed to be on a pathway to getting results and figuring out what's working and what's not working. So I can't support any amendment that's going to be taking funding out of this department. I also, I guess the question is, we've had some amendments that have passed now that have, I guess it's really about like different things we do in housing, and I'm wondering like why we don't have this study first before and see what comes out of this. Maybe social housing is the way. Maybe something comes out of this study before we start changing up existing programs or pulling money. I myself was waiting until March of next year to look at the budget overall because we'll have information that comes back to us, I believe, in February February or so. And so I'm just wondering, why are we making these big decisions around some of the housing amendments instead of waiting to see how this study shakes out and other things that are coming up in this budget? And then, because we can amend at any time. It's not like we have to do everything right now. Just, I'm not understanding why this study and also the additional things. And no one has to answer the question. This is just me kind of sorting through what's playing out here over the last few days. It really doesn't, it doesn't feel well thought out or like it's that it's in the best interest, especially when this department, race equity, has been on the forefront of a lot of folks' mouths. What are we do? Like, how are we approaching race equity in the city as a whole? And I don't know, like, does the money, how this money will be taken out and affecting the things that have, the decisions that have come before us in this committee, in committees around the race equity department. So if Council President Payne could answer that for me, that's a direct question. Like, how do you see, we've had, oh my goodness, extensive presentations from this department about the work moving forward. And so to remove the money from that department at this time, just wondering, like, how do you see the work continuing and playing out? And is the goal that we just in the entire department and move the staff into, other positions throughout the enterprise?
Council President Payne, before I ask if you would like to address that question, I'm just going to remind colleagues that as we continue discussion on this item, let's please keep discussion narrowly focused to the amendment that is before the body. Would you like to address that question?
Sure. Yeah, this is kind of the age-old question for any organization, make versus buy. Do you do something in-house or do you outsource it? I think that this is a body of work that needs to be durable and not a one-time report, but ongoing work. And I think that having our full-time staff that have the expertise owning that work is going to serve the institution better.
So we have someone on staff in race equity that have done previous social housing studies, or you're just saying that they're credentialed enough, in your opinion, to do a social housing study?
Oh, no. I'm answering your question about the source. In terms of the social housing study, that's an allocation for our policy and research group so that they have the resources to contract with outside.
To contract with somebody outside.
Yes, but for the racial equity work of which we're sourcing from, I think it's much more appropriate for that work to be done in-house.
Okay. But, that's the work. I'm sorry, Chair. I know where you're going with the veering off into other subjects, but it's kind of hard not to in this particular instance because there's just been so much conversation about like what the race equity department is set up to do and what the goals are for this department. I guess I'm not understanding like how we've drawn this conclusion now that they have the ability to do this work within the department, but the past 2-3 years, we've been talking about them having the option of sourcing it out if they need or, getting partnered. I just don't know where that conclusion was drawn and who made the decision.
Following in 2022, we approved the Councilmember Vito. I want to address your question. In 2022, this body approved the government restructure omnibus ordinance. In that ordinance, the Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Department was created, and its role shifted, and it was tasked with this narrow role of addressing systemic inequities within the enterprise itself. And so the thought on the purpose of this change item, the racial equity framework change item, is to conduct to outsource and have a study completed on how to address on a framework for racial equity within this institution. The belief of the author here, as he's outlined, and I'll speak as an author here myself too, is that this study is supposed to do the work that we have an entire staff within the Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Department tasked with doing. So that work can happen
department that
in-house.
struggles with staffing.
Fair point.
I mean, like,
Fair
it's
point.
not like this is a department that has seen strength. There's been a huge amount of turnover in this department. So I really don't, we can end the conversation now, but I just want, it just doesn't make sense for me. This department has not shown strength in staffing, retaining employees at all. This has been a struggle. I've seen two directors in my time here. And the other staff has, I mean, there's been massive turnover. I see. I'm sorry.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Wansley, followed by Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Vice President Chuktai. I just also wanted to reinforce Council President Payne's comments in terms of REIB's ability to do this in-house. The reason why I feel confident in drawing that conclusion is I use the example around truth and reconciliation work. So many of you know last cycle or budget cycle, we passed a budget allocation to give them money to do truth and reconciliation work. And for months and months and months, that work became delayed. And I met with them repeatedly throughout early this year, along with, I believe, we had deputy COs also part of those meetings, which seems to be mandated these days. And as part of those conversations, we asked, what do you need help with in order to get this work done? Do you need a contract in order to get a framework outlined so that you can actually go out and do the truth and reconciliation work that our communities have been asking for? And we asked, do you need a contractor? We're more than happy to figure out how to do an earmark or appropriation to support that work. REIB decided to not pursue a contract and actually developed a truth and reconciliation framework in-house themselves. They were able to develop that with their own subject matter expertise. So if they can develop a truth and reconciliation framework within their own shared expertise between PhDs and master's degrees, I absolutely feel confident that they should be able to absolutely develop a framework around anti-racist principles and praxis and methodologies, all those things that goes into develop a framework. I feel very confident that our staff should be able to do that. And I hope that once they're able to do that, they can also pair that with meetings, maybe with some members on this body, so that folks can understand the significance, even in 2024, why slavery still exists in the context of our prison systems, or why we're advocating for communities like Little Earth and Phillips or Midtown, and the need to get resources to communities that have been historically deprived by this city and along racial lines. So I would love to see that department do a lot more internal consultation with even members of this body, and not just those who are not my skin tone too, but actually those mine as well. So I know they have the ability to do this work in-house as they've demonstrated elsewhere. So I feel good in supporting this amendment and making sure we're able to get resources to also evaluate how we can champion other housing measures that's going to address housing disparities in our city.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Jenkins, followed by Councilmember Osman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm confused. I thought we had the capacity in-house with our policy and research team to do this work, and we're saying they need to contract it out. Maybe their capacity is being stretched thin by the number of projects. If that's the case, please let me know. But I'm not sure why they need contracted services to do this work. I really thought they were capable, had the degrees and everything to be able to do this kind of research.
Council President Payne, would you like to address that question?
Yes, they're a very small team doing very mighty work on this subject matter. We have the benefit of organizations like the University of Minnesota's Cura team that does a lot of very specific housing policy work. Because this is such a specific scope, I wanted to make sure that they had the resources to do that external contracting on this topic. In particular, a lot of the request was coming from some of our local renters' rights advocacy groups as well, and I wanted there to be the resources so that we could have as comprehensive approach as possible on this topic.
Well, to some of the points that have been made, I mean, REIB, in terms what I know, is a very small department as well. tasked with a number of really critical issues, and I'm sorry, they're not really fully meeting those needs that we have right now. Someone mentioned there's a truth and reconciliation process, but our community is saying they are not seeing that at all. Period. That's what they came up here and told us. I guess that was the impetus of denying the work at 38th and Chicago, George Floyd Square, because there hasn't been truth and reconciliation yet. So I'm just, these comments are hard to understand. And we're taking one contracted services and giving it to another department to do contracted services that I would assume, because I think that's what the council president is doing, I would assume that PAR has the capacity to do that work. The degrees, the PhDs, the master's degrees, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, colleagues, we have the social housing study amendment offered by council members Payne, Ellison, Chowdhury, Wansley, Chugtai, Osman, and Chavez before us. I will ask the clerk to call the roll on amendment number 36.
Councilmember Payne.
Aye.
Wansley.
Aye.
Rainville.
Nay.
Vita.
No.
Ellison.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Cashman.
Aye.
Jenkins.
Nay.
Chavez.
Aye.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Palmisano.
No.
Vice Chair Kosky.
Aye.
Chair Chuktai.
Aye.
There are 9 ayes and 4 nays.
That motion carries. Amendment number 37 is offered by Vice Chair Kosky. Vice Chair Kosky, will you please introduce the Latino Cultural Destination Amendment and move its approval?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Latino Cultural Destination Budget Proposal seeks to fund the creation of an economic development plan for a Latino cultural destination in Minneapolis. Their focus will be in the Uptown area. A proposal is being driven by the Minnesota Latino Small Business Council. The funding will support the creation of an economic development plan, which will include feasibility and preliminary design. The Latino population in Minneapolis has been growing steadily, playing an essential role in our local economy, from contributing to the workforce and driving entrepreneurship through small business ownership to enriching the city's cultural landscape. The Latino community is an integral part of Minneapolis' vibrancy and vitality. The Latino Cultural Destination aims to celebrate and showcase Latino culture while providing a dedicated hub for community connection and cultural exchange. Beyond its cultural significance, the destination will also have a strong economic impact by creating jobs, driving economic vitality, and establishing a cluster of economic growth that benefits both the Latino community and the city at large. The funding the creation of the economic development plan is a strategic investment that will set the stage for leveraging of future private state contributions in its development. Thank you.
Vice Chair Kosky has moved approval of amendment number 37. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
That item has been properly moved and seconded. Colleagues, is there any discussion or questions related to this item? I will first recognize Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Vice Chair Kosky, for the intent behind this amendment. I think it's great to support Latino cultural destination proposals. However, I cannot support this amendment, and I'll just explain why. Vibrant Storefronts Initiative has really been a bright spot of this year. It's been something that I think is really working with filling vacant storefronts and hopefully more across the city, but at least the ones that have been launched this year with the $250,000 in Loring Park has been really positive, supporting arts organizations. There are 4 recipients of that initial funding. And the plan for this money, which is the source for this amendment, is to expand that impact across the city, including in Uptown. And I really want to keep that money intact, and I'm not willing to part with even $125,000 for it for like a one-off development here. So I would just ask my colleagues to consider the impacts to the Vibrant Storefronts expansion across Uptown and the cultural districts that would be impacted by this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Jenkins, followed by Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious, don't we already have a Latino cultural center being developed on Lake Street? Is that?
Vice Chair Koski, would you like to address that question?
Thank you, through the chair. There is definitely several businesses and work for a cultural district there, but they see a growth opportunity here, especially with the vacant storefronts in Uptown, and so want to be able to take that opportunity to be part of the support in revitalizing Uptown and see that as an opportunity to grow and expand. The Latino population is significantly growing, but I don't know. Actually, I think maybe Councilmember Chavez has a good quote maybe for his next one, so I don't want to take that. But I do know that the support that the city of Minneapolis has been giving for entrepreneurs who are Latino, we rank in the lowest across the country. And so this is an opportunity for us to help them think about deriving a holistic plan. We've talked a lot about creating holistic plans here, and this is their opportunity to do that, and then also to leverage other funding, outsource funding. So I hear the pushback from Councilmember Cashman. I understand taking away from the vibrant storefronts, but the goal here is that they will be filling those storefronts in Uptown. So I hope that helps answer the question.
No, the question was, do we have a cultural center being developed on Lake Street?
And I don't believe
that... A Latino cultural center.
Councilmember Jenkins, would it be okay if we asked Councilmember Chavez to address your question?
Yeah, whoever can answer the question.
Councilmember Chavez, would you like to address that question?
Thank you, Council Vice President Chuktai. So there is a development by Copal. It's a Copal project on Lake Street where they are building a Latino Center for Community Engagement. It is a nonprofit. It wouldn't be like a business, but correct. It would be some sort of nonprofit development on Lake Street.
And the city has support and funding for that project, right?
We're voting on that amendment later today.
I thought we committed we maybe more resources. I'm not sure what the next amendment is, but
it's later down.
Have we not funded this current project that's happening now?
I don't think so. I did make a request. Maybe we did previously, but this one right now, I don't know. I can only answer. Yeah.
I see Director Hansen or potentially Director DeSenza coming up to answer the question of the city's investment in the in that project on Lake Street. Welcome, Director Hansen.
Thank you, Council Vice President and Councilmember Jenkins, I think, asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a pass-through grant for transit-oriented communities for the Capel project. I have to pull that up. Those notes for that budget amendment. And then there's an amendment that's coming up for your consideration later in the packet.
So the pass-through is from the $8 million from the state?
That program, that is a contract that we have with the foundation, the Grace Foundation, and that is doing marketing and pre-development work on Lake Street. That is being administered through them, through the city. This would be a program through Hennepin County.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a entity, Copal, that is developing a cultural center on Lake Street, a Latino cultural center on Lake Street. And then I'm curious, we do have the Latino Economic Development Corporation, LEDC, I believe. It seems to me they would be an appropriate entity to be conducting this economic study. Is that where these funds are intended to go?
Vice Chair Koski. Thank you. An RFP will have to go out, and they're more than welcome to apply to that. But the individuals that have approached me are around 250 small businesses that have formed the Latino Small Business Council. they will also apply to this. So who, in the end, will be able to do this feasibility study? And again, this is different than the COPAL. This is about supporting the economic vitality of Uptown. That's really where their focus is going to be with this.
I guess I don't understand then, because it's called Latino Cultural Destination, not Latino Economic Development Planning.
We can name it something else if you like. I think they're trying to get people to come to Uptown, and they want to be part of bringing people back to Uptown and creating that destination. That means taking some of their businesses that they have and seeing this opportunity for growth and expanding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you. I cannot support this because it's pitting downtown versus the neighborhoods. And common sense will tell us we have to understand we're facing a budget crisis because of the empty buildings in downtown. So when these mega office buildings are empty and their tax base keeps getting lower and lower, every renter, every owner in Minneapolis is going to have to pay the price. And by diverting the funds, thank you for listening to me.
Through the chair, I just want to, through the chair, I just want to let you know that the money is not just for downtown that Councilmember Cashman was describing. It was going to be the new storefront project was going to be expanding beyond downtown, and so it wouldn't just be to downtown. So I'm not trying to pit money against, I'm actually trying to enhance and support Latino entrepreneurs and work with them to help think about an area that they see opportunity and a space for growth. They may also, through this feasibility study, show that downtown is the place for them.
I know what you're trying to do. And what the effect of this is going to be is to continue the lack of support for downtown to get those office buildings going. I'm not voting for this. And we all should focus on increasing the tax base in downtown so it decreases the taxes on the neighborhood business districts, every renter in the city, and every building owner in this city.
Thank you. I put myself in queue. I wanted to just speak to this budget amendment. First I will say certainly there's an emphasis placed on the devaluation of commercial property in downtown. In the reports that we've received earlier this year from our assessor's office, we also see a devaluation of commercial property in Uptown. The impact of that is felt very deeply in the Uptown, both commercial and residential community. I have the honor of representing Uptown alongside Councilmember Cashman, and I see this proposal as something that is helping fill empty storefronts in Uptown. That's helping bring minority or marginalized entrepreneurs into Uptown to invest in Uptown for the long haul, small business owners, local business owners to Uptown for the long haul. And I think that's a worthwhile investment. And so I'm excited to support it today. And with that, I will recognize Councilmember Vita, followed by Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very confused about what this amendment's goals are, or like what's the plan here, really. I really don't understand. I committed to the vibrant storefronts, and if that includes Uptown, then I think that's fine. If we're going to include the empty storefronts in Uptown in the Vibrant Storefronts initiative, that is perfectly fine. I would like to include Laurie in that. I'd also like to include Broadway, and I would love for the Latino community to come and use the spaces in North Minneapolis as a part of this. I really don't get what this study is going to do, and I personally would prefer to give this $120 $125,000 to some Latino businesses to go into some storefronts instead of what we're proposing here. We've committed as a council to the Vibrant Storefront Initiative, and I think we should continue with that. Cutting it at $125,000 is a big deal. It's a huge amount of money, and we've committed to people in this community that we're going to have their backs on getting into these empty storefronts, and that this program will continue to grow. I know personally there was a large amount of applicants who applied for this, and we didn't have enough money as it was to get the businesses of color. I think Councilmember Cashman is saying 40, and we only awarded maybe 4 or 5. I see Director Johnson is here. Could you please come up, Director, and give me the numbers of folks who applied versus who we got? I was really disappointed in the number. Not that anyone did wrong, but that the need was there, and I would have loved to see more people of color receive the funding for the Vibrant Storefronts, because we do have the empty space. So could you tell me those numbers, please?
Welcome, Director. If you'll first begin by introducing yourself.
Yes, good afternoon. Ben Johnson, Arts and Cultural Affairs Director, to the Vice President and through to Commissioner Vita. When we first launched this pilot initiative, and now we're moving beyond the pilot initiative, as we conducted our first open house of available spaces in Harmon Place, we had 150 organizations preview those spaces. We had 42 applicants, and we awarded 5.
Wow. See, I just don't know how this could even be up for grabs, how somebody would see this as an opportunity to take money from this department when the need is there. And I'm sure that's a lot of organizations of color that apply for this, including the Latino community. Do you have any of those numbers, Director?
I don't
No
have,
pressure.
I don't have the breakdown for Latino specifically, but it was 80% BIPOC.
80% communities of color who applied for this?
Yes, of the total number of applicants.
And what would this look like to include storefronts in Uptown?
Councilmember Vita, and through the chair, we would be looking at 5 to 7 placements.
Okay.
Or 5 to 10, I'm sorry.
That's the work. The work has been done. What we need to do is put more money into this initiative so you can get, you saying 5 to 7 placements, so we can get 15 placed in Uptown and include the folks out of this community. That's the work. I don't see what cutting this is going to achieve. I think we would be taking many steps backwards if we cut the existing funding and I guess piloted something different. I really think this is an opportunity for us to create cultural districts. I think this is a big way for the city to offset these huge costs for communities of color to get in storefronts that they would have never had an opportunity to be in 5 years ago. So I hope colleagues don't support this and we look at a different way of doing this. Thank you so much, Director, for being here.
I will next recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Vita, for your comments. And I don't stand alone when I say we've all lauded the work of our Arts and Culture Department for your innovative programming of the vibrant downtown storefronts and the need for it to expand to other struggling areas. I do not think this proposal offsets or reprioritizes the good that will come from investment elsewhere. I think this would be better as a CPED business grant proposal, for example. Our small business team is the best in the city at reaching Latino business owners. They often do impressive work using community partners and surrogates for that work, using people in community for that work. The Graves Foundation was mentioned. It also does some really good work. Many of us went on a bus tour a few years ago, led by former Mayor R.T. Ryback, with state legislators, actually, about how we could strategize with all the many nonprofits in the area of the Lake Street corridor, that is. The Graves Foundation was the starting point and ending point for that conversation, and it was about how we coordinate all the different existing efforts to most effectively lobby the state for revitalization funds. Some of those we and those nonprofit partners received. That even if we don't see that money fully deployed yet, that was a very coordinated effort with people in the area. I'm afraid this pits the revitalization of Uptown against a desire for something new elsewhere. And, you know, this one-time money stuff, I think everybody here on this dais are all very well-intentioned. But when we're using one-time money like this, I think we're all also really out of our depth as council members. We're really overextending ourselves here. We're overextending our city when we do these one-time pilots that are amendment after amendment. And I'll say this very carefully. I think this proposal lacks the vision and, frankly, the understanding of the economic needs of our entire city and is not considering the loss of this expansion in a highly impacted community.
Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you. Director Johnson, you don't have to come up, but I didn't see you sitting over there, so I just want to echo all the praise you're getting, because you're doing a great job, and thank you for your service to this organization. Thank you. And I just want to remind this council that the past leadership, we had great leadership in the 70s and 80s, council members, mayors who saw the need to make downtown safe and vibrant and to build it up and get that tax base, and we have to follow that to get us back on track as a city, so our low-income and fixed-income residents are not suffering from these great increases in taxes.
Thank you. And then finally, I will recognize Councilmember Chavez, and then we'll call the roll on this item.
Thank you. If staff could please let me know how much money was allocated to this program this year? Not this budget, but how much we had funding for this year? Oh, I know. I just want to hear it.
Through Vice President and to Councilmember Chavez, we had allocated $250,000 for our budget for this year, and so we were seeking to double the amount of money in Harmon Place, another $250,000, $500,000 in downtown, $500,000 in uptown.
And how much is this one right now?
Excuse me?
How much is being allocated in the current proposed budget? In the current mayor's administration budget?
Yep.
It's $250,000?
Yep.
Okay. That is incorrect. So I'm trying to get.
It's a total of how much for Vibrant?
Oh, so
for the whole thing.
$1,250,000.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
So we went from $250,000 to $1.25 million.
With this amendment, that's what it would reduce it to?
You would reduce it by $125,000.
Okay. Okay, so it's still, we're fine.
It's still
so it's going to be okay. I support this amendment. I just want us to understand here that, like, you know, me and Councilor Murkowski got to work on this together, and, like, I do appreciate this amendment, and I think it's an important thing to acknowledge that, like, this is a community that matters in our community, and having these resources to develop this plan is going to be a good thing to our city. One thing I do know that folks on Lake Street, I represent a lot of folks on Lake Street, the Latino community in there too, but I get reached out by the Latino community all over the city, because I'm the Latino along with Councilmember Ellison, but they reach out to me from all over the city. So I'm actually very proud to support this, because it's also going to go to a different part of the city that I get reached out to that also believes and reach out to me for these things. So I just want to mention that it doesn't seem like there's going to be much of impact. There's money there next year. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, colleagues, the amendment number 37 offered by Vice Chair Koski is before us. I will ask the clerk to call the roll on the Latino Cultural Destination Amendment.
Councilmember Payne.
Aye.
Wansley.
Aye.
Rainville.
Nay.
Vita.
No.
Ellison.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Cashman.
No.
Jenkins.
Nay.
Chavez.
Aye.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Palmisano.
No.
Vice Chair Koski.
Aye.
Chair Chuktai.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes and 5 nays.
That motion carries. Amendment number 38
is offered by council members Chavez and Ellison. A revised version of the proposal was brought forward yesterday in the packet of changes. The motion remains the same. So with that, I will recognize Councilmember Chavez to please introduce and move approval of your amendment.
Thank you, Council Vice President Chuck Tai. This is authored by me and Councilmember Ellison. It just ensures that Latino Business Week stays. It wasn't in the mayor's budget, so we're making this ongoing. And I made changes to the description to ensure that there isn't an impact to Black Business Week. The mayor's memo said that this could literally technically cut some of the Black Business Week funding. We do not want to do that. We want to keep Latino Business Week at $70,000. We want to keep Black Business Week at $70,000. We do not want to pit our communities against each other. So we want to make sure, I'm saying this out loud because that's the legislative intent, and that's also in the new revised motion on the description. So just want to make it clear. We should not be putting communities against each other.
Councilmember Chavez has moved approval of this item. Is there a second? That item has been, amendment number 38 as revised has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions from the body? I will recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
Madam Chair, I see in this packet that it's outlined in green, which means we have a new one here in this packet. But all I have in my packet is the budget proposal part of it. So
That's correct.
That is correct.
Yes.
As I mentioned, there's only a revision to the proposal. The motion remains the same as what's in your binder.
So then a question for the author, was this an original source of funding that got changed? How is it not meant to, if it's taking from this fund, how is it not meant to then somehow diminish Black Business Week?
So the mayor's administration said that if in their memo that this could impact Black Business Week or I believe BTAP services. I do not want to impact Black Business Week. That should not be the intention. I hope that's not the mayor's intention to put communities against each other. So I wrote in the revised motion that this should not impact Black Business Week at all. Initially, if you remember, Councilor Palmisano, I made an amendment last year at $30,000 because that's how Black Business Week started. There is ongoing funding in the budget for $70,000 for Black Business Week. This year, we want to bring it to parity with Black Business Week, so there would be $70,000 for both Latino Business Week and $70,000 for Black Business Week. In the mayor's memo, he said this could, I believe, impact BTAP services, or it would cause Black Business Week and Latino Business Week to split some of that cost. I do not want to, and I believe me and Councilor Ellison probably, I don't want to speak for you, do not want to impact Black Business Week. I think it is unfair to put communities against each other, and I believe that both these programs should be funded at an equitable amount.
So, Mr. Chair, I appreciate that, the fair use of resources, but this one blows my mind. Like, how can you entertain an amendment without a source then? If you're saying you're not going to impact, your intent is not to impact Black Business Week, but you're going to use that same money, why do what we're doing on all the other amendments to find sources if you're just going to say, we're going to appropriate this money, but don't impact all the things you're already doing? Doesn't that take funds?
Well, if you want to call up Director DeSenza, we and her emailed back and forth, and she said it is unlikely that the mayor's administration would take funding away from Black Business Week. But Director, we talked about this over email. If you can please say that and confirm that. I'm happy to change the amendment to ensure that Black Business Week isn't impacted. I just think it's unfair that it would even be a consideration that Black Business Week would be impacted when we're trying to continue with this program. I think that's just wrong.
I'd be happy to use my time to hear the budget director say whatever it is she might want to say about it.
Welcome back, Director.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai. A couple things. So the email that I exchanged with Councilmember Chavez was me opining, which is, I guess, not something I should do in the future. But I know that Black Business Week is important to the city of Minneapolis, and so it doesn't seem likely to me. But we would need to ask CPED how they would handle it. I don't believe it's enforceable in the narrative that it does indicate that that's the legislative intent. But I don't think it's enforceable to say that CPED can't make that choice. I did also just want to note that it's $100,000 ongoing for Black Business Week. That was a change in the 2024 budget.
So then, a question for the authors. Is $100,000 ongoing for for business weeks, for highlighting different groups within our city, and of that $100,000 ongoing, you're going to take $70,000 of it ongoing and earmark it for Latino Business Week without any cuts to Black Business Week. That's your intent.
So to be clear, the mayor's administration did not add Latino Business Week into his proposal.
Sure,
He did
and
not
I
do that, and that was
respect your
confirmed.
interest
and that was
in wanting
confirmed.
to add it.
Yeah, so we are making sure that Latino Business Week is now added. And I talked to the mayor's administration and his staff, and they confirmed this with me. They did not add it, Latino Business Week. My goal last year was adding $30,000 because I wanted to make sure that Latino Business Week started at the same level as Black Business Week. When they first started, I believe they started at $30,000. So what we're doing here is making sure that we bring it up again to the parity of Black Business Week, which last year was $70,000. I did not know they increased that. So I'm glad that Black Business Week is going to get $100,000. I still want to make sure that Latino Business Week at least is in alignment with what it was last year, of Black Business Week of $70,000. I would be happy to move it to $100,000 because I believe this community deserves it. But the goal here is I can make an amendment to make sure that it doesn't impact Black Business Week, but that is up to the discretion of CPED and CPED themselves. If they want to come up here and speak saying that they will commit to not impacting Black Business Week when we should be having both these things, that would be enough too, I think.
I respect your viewpoint on that. It just seems strange that you're then taking the lion's share of $100,000 and allocating it to Latino Business Week.
No, we're not doing that. There is
Could you please explain?
$100,000 allocated for Black Business Week. There is no money allocated for Latino Business Week. We are saying CPED, make sure that there is now at least $70,000 ongoing in your budget so we don't have to come back next year to celebrate Latino Business Week. There is no funding for Latino Business Week, and I have proof of that because I talked to the mayor's administration when we were planning Latino Business Week, and they told me there was no money for Latino Business Week and that I would have to do another amendment.
So I'm still a little confused on the source of this funding. Director Hansen, where would this come from in your budget?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through the chair, Councilmember Palmisano. Last year in the budget, the council approved a directive of $30,000 for Latino Business Week within the small business team. This year, the directive is $70,000. That would have to come from something within our small business team. We believe there's two places to get that. The $100,000 was an appropriation in the mayor's budget. It started at 30 to Councilmember Chavez's, and it was added another 70, so it's 100. The reason you saw in the memo it potentially the Black Business Week is a potential source is we have to work within the budget of the team. Last year, we spent about $60-some thousand on Black Business Week, so there's a balance in that fund. That would be something that augmented. We would know how much we spend on Black Business Week because that happens earlier than in the year than Latino Business Week. Otherwise, it would have an impact on business technical assistance and the other actions that happen out of the small business team already.
So it does seem like it's competing for funds. I mean, they're in the small business team, which does amazing work. I already spoke about that in the last amendment, how they deploy and use their services, their small but mighty services to get
Councilmember
out into the
Palmisano, your time has
community.
expired. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Ellison, but perhaps before we do that, I think it would be helpful for all of us to understand how this amendment is written and what it is going to cut and what it is not going to cut. So, amendment number 38 earmarks $70,000 within the CPED department's Economic Policy and Development Division. Just so we're all clear, there are many things that are funded within the Economic Policy and Development Division, including $100,000 for Black Business Week. That division's total budget for 2025 is $27,905,555. That's its total planned expenditures. So, but there are 27 million other dollars to try to find $70,000 within this. This is not inherently cutting or pitting Black Business Week and Latino Business Week against one another. And so just so we're all talking with facts and figures and real numbers. With that, Councilmember Ellison.
I was essentially going to say that same thing, that this amendment is asking CPED to create a line item in their budget in the same vein as Black Business Week is created as a line item within their budget, and was not prescriptive about about how they go about doing that. And so I would like to think that 70,000 is not such a high hurdle to clear that we can do it without having to have detrimental effects to other programs. And certainly putting Black Business Week in the memo is something that, the mayor knows is going to get a lot of attention. A lot of us care about Black Business Week, and we want to. And I think to me and Councilmember Chavez's point is that we don't want to see these two programs competing with one another. We don't want to see programs pitted against each other. That we want to see increased parity between Black Business Week and Latino Business Week, and that this is how we think we can get there. And so I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Finally, I will recognize Councilmember Palmisano, and then we'll call the roll on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll continue, but first to respond to Councilmember Ellison, I appreciate that, and thank you. I don't think that $70,000 in a $28 million CPED budget is something that couldn't be accommodated. But it is the cumulative impact here of all of these amendments, of all of these pilot programs that you are passing time after time. The small business team, which specifically is part, the director spoke about the small business team. Does this mean layoffs? Does this mean $70,000 from our BTAP program? I don't think we want to. So I'd really suggest that the authors here choose a specific place within CPED to remove it from, because it seems as though we are comfortable saying to the administration, well, just make a cut. You have so much money, just make a cut, and then being able to react and say, oh gosh, no, not that one. The small business team of our city is an extremely important resource to small businesses. We've heard time and time again, especially these last couple of months, about how small business owners in our city need help, and this is our main way to help them. So I cannot support this kind of an amendment as written. I do hope that we can pull off both of these events with the same amount of money, but frankly, we are asking staff to do more and more and more around here, and these are the same staff that have denied cost of living adjustments, and I'm not sure that they aren't leaving the city right now because of that.
We have the Latino Business Week amendment offered by Council Members Chavez and Ellison before us. I will ask the clerk to call the roll on amendment number 38.
Councilmember Payne.
Aye.
Wansley.
Aye.
Rainville.
Aye.
Vito.
Aye.
Ellison.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Cashman.
Aye.
Jenkins.
Aye.
Chavez.
Aye.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Palmisano.
No.
Vice Chair Koski.
Aye.
Chair Chuktai.
Aye.
There are 12 ayes and 1 nay.
That motion carries. Colleagues, let's see if we can try to get through amendment number 39 real quick. This is the Developers Technical Assistance Program amendment offered by Councilmember Ellison and myself. Councilmember Ellison, I will recognize you to very briefly introduce and move approval of this amendment.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is to put $350,000 into our DTAP program, which is one of the many technical assistance programs that's had a lot of success from CPED, and. If I'm remembering correctly, there wasn't an allocation for DTAP, and I think we can all agree that DTAP is a really important tool in our city. We want to see more local, more emerging, even smaller developers being able to move through our city and be able to create projects and create value all across the city. It does use one-time funding from the Downtown Assets Fund, and so that is the source of this. And I'm happy to stand for any questions, but that's sort of the nuts and bolts. I hope folks, I'm happy to speak to any questions.
Councilmember Ellison has moved approval of this item. Is there a second?
Second.
That item has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I will first recognize Councilmember Cashman, then Councilmember Palmisano, and then we're calling the roll on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I told this to all of the council members who sourced their amendments from the Downtown Assets Fund that I can't support that and won't be supporting this amendment. I guess my main concern is that we don't know how the trajectory of the Downtown Assets Fund will be impacted by pulling from it, because the businesses that actually pay the taxes that fill the Downtown Assets Fund aren't necessarily going to benefit from the programs that are using this source. And so in order to keep the fund in good health, I would rather have a strategy designed by this council about how we plan to use the Downtown Assets Fund going forward. And I would be happy to write a legislative directive in early 2025 to have Jeff Johnson, who does manage the Downtown Assets Fund, come in front of the council and explain like the last 5 years of the Downtown Assets Fund and how the health has been and how we see the next 5 years of the Downtown Assets Fund, given where economy is shifting. But without that information, I just can't support pulling from it for these amendments before us. And I would encourage us all to, think about the health of this fund and how we want to make sure it's maintained so that we can continue to use it going forward. Thank you.
Next, I will recognize Councilmember Palmisano, followed by Councilmember Rainville.
Madam Chair, per the staff memo, and maybe someone will jump into queue and tell me why the staff are all wrong, we already have the capacity to continue this work. This is not needed. The use of the Downtown Assets Fund is an increase to our spending, and it's an increase to our budget. This fund is not unlimited. We have relied on it a lot this year. We have relied on it a lot this year to do other things that we wanted to do with this council. We cannot keep going back to that as the same well, though I will say I do love to see a source here, so thank you for that. Thank you for naming the source, that this would be a Downtown Assets Fund appropriation. The Downtown Assets Fund is to maintain our city-owned or city-encumbered downtown assets. I think it's important to have a developer's technical assistance program, but this money isn't needed. These additional funds are not needed to complete that work, and I cannot support it.
Next, I will recognize Councilmember Rainville. Go ahead.
Thank you. And Councilmember Cashman, I'll be happy to co-author that legislative directive with you. So I look forward to getting more information about the Downtown Assets Fund. And Councilmember Ellison, I do appreciate the intent of this, but I just can't support it. Right now, the only economic engine that is working for the city, the only business district, is downtown Minneapolis. And to take $1 away from that is just short-sighted. So I look forward to getting more information and truly having an honest discussion about that Downtown Assets Fund. But it just does not make common sense to take away assets from a program that's working. Thank you.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with some of my colleagues' remarks about the Downtown Asset Fund, and I find it somewhat confusing, and that we just literally said, CPAC, go find $70,000, and then we're now trying to appropriate another $350,000. It kind of boggles my brain, but that's what we're doing.
And then finally, I'll recognize Councilmember Ellison.
I mean, I would argue that 350,000 and 70,000 are not the same amounts, but so that kind of speaks to why why I felt one needed a source and one needed kind of some distinction within an existing budget. The other thing I'll say is that unless I'm confused, I thought we had gotten information that this work was not funded this year, and so if I'm mistaken, I'm happy to hear that and change direction on this item.
Director Hansen.
Through the chair, Councilmember Ellison, we have a current funding of an annual appropriation of $350 that would end with current contracts roughly around April of next year, if not refunded.
Okay, so that's helpful to know. If there's genuine, I'm happy to take this vote right now and call the roll right now. But if there's genuine interest and collaboration, I'm happy to move this item to the bottom of the stack and engage with my colleagues on a different source or to change of direction on this item.
It sounds like, I think we're ready to call the roll. I'm not seeing anyone else hopping in queue. So
Then
with
we can
that,
call the roll.
Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll on the revised item number 39?
Councilmember Payne.
Aye.
Wansley.
Aye.
Rainville.
Nay.
Vita.
No.
Your mics are on.
Ellison.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Cashman.
No.
Jenkins.
Nay.
Chavez.
Aye.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Palmisano.
No.
Vice Chair Koski.
Nay.
Chair Chugtai.
Aye.
There are 7 ayes and 6 nays.
Motion carries. With that, colleagues, we will, with no objection, we will adjourn this meeting to 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. Thank you.